I never imagined a simple morning errand would shake the ground beneath my feet. That day, sunlight spilled lazily through the curtains as I grabbed Daniel's car keys. He'd rushed out earlier, muttering something about an early meeting. To me, it felt like any other Tuesday, ordinary, uneventful, the kind of day you barely notice. I slipped into his car, the leather still carrying the faint trace of his cologne. But the second I turned the ignition, everything shifted. The dashboard lit up, glowing blue and steady, and then the GPS spoke. Fastest route, home. At first I smiled at the thought of heading back, until I noticed the address. It wasn't ours, not even close. This so-called home was across town, in a neighborhood I rarely even drove through. My smile faded instantly. My heart ticked faster, sharp and unsettled. I gripped the steering wheel a little tighter, trying to make sense of it. Maybe Daniel had been at a client's place. Maybe it was just a glitch. But the street name stared back at me like it knew a secret I didn't. I whispered it quietly to myself, repeating it until it stuck in my mind. The GPS dimmed back to silence, but I couldn't. A pit formed in my stomach, heavy and undeniable, telling me this wasn't nothing. This was something. The rest of that drive felt strange, almost like I wasn't the one behind the wheel. My hands moved, my eyes scanned the road, but my mind was locked on that address glowing in my head. I kept asking myself why Daniel's GPS would suggest it. He never mentioned knowing anyone in that part of town. And Daniel wasn't the type to get sloppy with details. At least, that's what I thought. When I pulled into the grocery store, I sat in the parking lot longer than usual, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My face looked calm, but inside, I felt that slow churn of suspicion I couldn't quite silence. I replayed the scene in my head, the screen lighting up, the word home, and then that alien address. It felt like a breadcrumb, accidentally dropped, daring me to follow. I tried to shake it off, telling myself not to invent stories where none existed. But the truth? That pit in my stomach only grew heavier. It wasn't just confusion anymore. It was fear, mixed with something sharper. Curiosity. And once curiosity takes hold, it doesn't let go. I told myself I'd let it go, but I already knew I wouldn't. Not this time. That night, I couldn't sleep. Daniel lay beside me, breathing evenly, as if the world hadn't tilted for me earlier that morning. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the rhythm of his breath, wondering what secrets it hid. Every time I closed my eyes, the GPS screen flashed back into view, that strange address pulsing like a beacon. My chest felt tight, like I was holding on to a question I wasn't ready to ask. I thought about the little details, how he'd been coming home later, how he kept his phone closer, face down on the table. I had brushed it all off, not wanting to seem paranoid, not wanting to doubt him. But now, with that address carved into my memory, it all felt connected. Like puzzle pieces I'd ignored were finally sliding into place. My mind raced, and the more I pieced together, the less I liked the picture forming. By morning, I had made a silent decision. I wasn't going to confront him, not yet. No, I'd keep this to myself, play along, act like nothing was wrong. But inside, I was alert, sharper than before. I needed to know the truth, and I was willing to follow that glowing breadcrumb trail wherever it led. After all, sometimes the answers you're not supposed to find are the ones that change everything. The very next day, Daniel told me he'd be working late. His voice was casual, the same tone he always used, but my ears caught every note. I smiled, nodded, even kissed his cheek as he left. But inside, my heart thudded with a new determination. I finally had the excuse I needed to test that strange address. No more guessing. No more second-guessing myself. Tonight, I would know. I waited until his car disappeared down the street before grabbing my keys. Sliding into the driver's seat, I entered the memorized address into the GPS. The screen lit up, confident, like it had been waiting for me. My palms felt damp against the wheel, but I steadied myself. This wasn't just a drive. This was a step into the unknown, into a truth I wasn't sure I wanted but couldn't ignore. The city lights blurred as I drove, each turn taking me farther from the familiar comfort of my neighborhood. My stomach twisted with every mile, my chest growing tighter with each green light that pushed me forward. And then, finally, the voice of the GPS softened into silence as I rolled up to a modest apartment building. Nothing fancy, just plain brick walls and narrow windows, the kind of place no one would notice. But I noticed. Oh, I noticed. I parked a few spaces away, keeping the engine off but my eyes wide open. The building looked ordinary, almost painfully so, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that it held something extraordinary or devastating. My pulse echoed in my ears, louder than the silence outside. I kept asking myself, what am I about to see? And deep down, I already knew the answer wouldn't be kind. Minutes crawled by like hours, each one stretching the knot in my stomach tighter. I almost convinced myself to leave, to pretend I had never been there. But then headlights swept across the lot, pulling me back to attention. My breath caught as Daniel's car turned in. He wasn't in a suit anymore. He'd changed into something more casual. In his hand, I spotted a bouquet of flowers, bright, fresh, deliberate. I sank lower in my seat, my body trembling but my eyes locked on him. He walked quickly, almost eagerly, to the entrance of the building. My chest burned as I watched him press the buzzer, his posture relaxed, familiar, like this was routine. A moment later, the door clicked open and he slipped inside without hesitation. And in that instant, the truth slammed into me. This wasn't a mistake. This was his other life. I sat frozen, gripping the steering wheel like it could hold me together. The bouquet haunted me. Those flowers weren't for me, hadn't been for me in a long time. My throat tightened, a mix of rage and heartbreak pressing hard against my chest. Watching him vanish into that building felt like watching the life I thought I had dissolve, brick by brick. The truth wasn't hidden anymore. It was standing right in front of me. I wanted to scream, to storm inside, to demand an explanation. But something stronger held me back. Control. I realized I had the upper hand, even if my heart was breaking. He had no idea I was there, no idea I was watching, no idea that the foundation of his lies had just cracked. In that moment, silence was my power, and I wasn't about to waste it. So, I stayed put, eyes glued to the door, mind racing. If this was where he went when he said he was working late, then I needed proof, solid proof. I knew this was only the beginning, and the answers waiting for me inside that building would demand patience. As the minutes passed, one thought looped in my head. If he had a second life, then I needed a second plan. The following days, I became someone I never thought I'd be. I wasn't just a wife anymore. I was a quiet investigator, a shadow trailing the man I once trusted. Each time Daniel announced he'd be working late, I didn't argue or question him. I just nodded, as though I believed him, then waited for the perfect moment to follow. Every drive back to that apartment tightened the knot in my chest but sharpened my focus. I watched from a distance, careful, patient, almost surgical in my silence. I took note of the times he arrived, the nights he stayed longer, the gifts tucked under his arm. Once, it was another bouquet of flowers. Another night, it was a small box, jewelry perhaps. Every gesture he made for her was one he had stopped making for me. And each observation etched itself deeper into my memory, forming a ledger of betrayal. One evening, I parked closer, windows cracked just enough to hear the faint sounds spilling out from an open window upstairs. His laughter, carefree, unguarded, the kind of laugh I hadn't heard in years. It pierced me, cruel and sweet all at once. My heart ached, but my resolve grew stronger. This wasn't just about catching him in the act. It was about reclaiming the power he thought he'd stolen from me. The woman appeared one night, stepping into the glow of the streetlight as Daniel opened the door for her. She was younger, carefree, her laughter bubbling like champagne. She clung to his arm with a comfort that cut me to the bone, as though she had every right to be there. I felt the air leave my lungs, yet I didn't move. Watching them together was like watching strangers in a play, except I knew I was the one cast as the fool. I didn't confront them. Not yet. Instead, I pulled out my phone, steadying my trembling hands, and snapped photos through the windshield. Each click was like a nail being driven into the coffin of our marriage. He smiled at her the way he used to smile at me, back when our love was new and effortless.